The Strait of Hormuz is the narrow waterway connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, serving as the critical artery for global energy. For decades, the United States has underwritten the maritime security required to keep that oil flowing. Recently, that flow has been heavily disrupted. The current instability in these waters is a direct result of unilateral U.S. military strikes and escalating kinetic pressure aimed at Iran. This disruption prompted the Trump administration to issue a highly transactional demand to the international community. The math, according to Washington, is simple. China imports significantly more oil from this region than the United States. Therefore, China should foot the bill for protecting it. This proposition places Beijing in a highly specific trap. If they refuse to help, the world's largest energy importer leaves its most vital supply lines entirely exposed to regional crossfire. But if Beijing agrees to join the U.S. maritime coalition, they end up paying to clean up a geopolitical mess that Washington initiated. Washington's demand is a calculated exercise in burden shifting. It is an attempt to corner Beijing into absorbing American liabilities under the guise of shared global security. To understand Beijing's refusal, you have to look at their physical energy requirements. To keep its vast domestic economy running, China relies heavily on a continuous, uninterrupted volume of Middle Eastern oil imports. However, Iran is a crucial geopolitical node for Beijing. It serves as a vital supplier in China's energy architecture and a willing partner in balancing against American influence. Aligning militarily with Washington in a coalition that directly targets Tehran would instantly sever that delicate partnership. For Beijing, joining the U.S. coalition would actively dismantle their own geopolitical security. It represents absolute strategic incoherence. The United States typically relies on massive, highly visible force projection to deter threats and maintain control over contested waters. Beijing requires a much quieter approach. Instead of military coercion, Chinese commercial vessels are actively securing safe, preferential passage through the strait by relying on back-channel diplomacy with Iranian authorities. When physical protection is required, they use a system of parallel security. China maintains existing anti-piracy naval deployments nearby in the Gulf of Aden, and they have expanded this fleet into a completely separate, independent escort platform. Beijing strictly mandates these patrols as humanitarian or maritime safety operations. This classification protects their commercial interests while maintaining formal distance from U.S. military strategy. Through quiet diplomacy and independent parallel security, China reaps the benefits of a stable supply chain without inheriting any of the political liabilities of operating in a crisis zone. Back in Washington, the aggressive military posture is hindered by domestic realities. Congressional support for Middle Eastern intervention is fragile, and the prospect of a protracted engagement carries heavy election year risks. Leadership in Beijing recognizes this fragility. They know their greatest geopolitical leverage is their capacity to simply withhold action. By deliberately doing nothing, Beijing forces the U.S. to bleed out, ensuring Washington bears the full financial and political costs of the escalation it started. This crisis actually yields dividends for China. Market disruptions allow them to negotiate cheaper energy pricing from isolated nations, while a stretched U.S. military reinforces the global narrative of American strategic fatigue. There are only two strict conditions that could force China to intervene. The first is institutional, a United Nations mandate that dilutes U.S. control and reframes the mission as a legal, collective security effort. The second condition is transactional. Washington would have to offer massive concessions to offset Beijing's risk, such as lifting severe technology restrictions or yielding on other highly contested global issues. Until Washington is willing to pay that steep price, Beijing's most devastating move is to remain deliberately uncommitted. In modern warfare, sometimes the winning move is letting your rival fight alone.